Michael Joseph here, host of Libertis Horizon. On our last Libertis Horizon session, I interviewed AJ Richards, who's from fromthefarm.org. And in this discussion, we talked about his family, the Bundy family, which is an all-American farm family, and the tragic story of how the BLM essentially tried to take over their land and how they overcame that. In that, land patents came up. So we had a great discussion about how land patents fit in that and how their family had the land patents, but they really weren't sure how to execute the patents or really defend those patents. So that was really, really important to unpack. And the deeper side of this is what's really going on behind the scenes. We have this unspoken crisis going on with our farmland in this country, and really it's around the world, but just focused on the US, 92% of all the farms are owned by just a handful of companies. So he has a lot of statistical information to share that brings forth the potential crisis we have if we don't become aware of this and start focusing our attention on local farming and community farming. And there are some really interesting bureaucratic shifts that are going on that AJ is part of. So he brings that forth just a little bit, and we'll probably bring him back on as some of that stuff unpacks a little bit more bureaucratically. Definitely worthy of leaning into and listening, very informative and very necessary for people to know about. Welcome to Libertis Horizon. Welcome, AJ Richards. Great to have you. We've kind of moved ourselves into new platforms, so welcome aboard to our new platform at Libertis Horizon. How you
Yeah,
doing?
great. Thanks for having me, Michael. I really appreciate it. And
Yeah.
thanks for letting me participate in kicking this off. That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you prefer AJ Richards or AJ? Like, what do you prefer?
AJ's great. Yep.
AJ is great.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
So, so we met. We first met at the Confluence
Yep.
earlier this year in 25,
Uh-huh.
and we had a rather brief interaction. And somebody knew we needed to meet. They said, "You need to meet AJ. You know, he's part of the Bundy family, and the work he's doing in regards to local farming and creating awareness is profound. You guys need to know each other. You're doing similar work in the world." And I'm
Yeah.
like, "Oh, of course, great." So they introduced us, and I was like, "Of course, we need to connect." So we had a really great chat like a month or so ago, with the intention of getting together and kind of bringing some more of the work you're doing forward. So I wanted to just create a little bit of an arc of what I'd like to try to bring forward today, and we'll see how it unfolds. One is the extraordinary story of the Bundy family. So you're a family member of the Bundys. So
Mhm.
for those of you that aren't familiar, you're going to be familiar with it because we're going to unpack that a little bit because it's really extraordinary and it's really kind of like an all-American story that people need to know about. So even myself, I remember reading about the Bundy story some years ago, but I kind of forgot about it. And then it came back when we had the conversation. I was like, oh, that's right. But you unpacked it in a way that I clearly wasn't familiar with, right? So you're very intimately aware of the situation. So I'd love to bring that forward.
Yeah.
And then, of course, bringing forward the work that you're doing in the world with fromthefarm.org, which
Mhm.
is really about, again, creating awareness about what's going on with the local farming and the real crisis that we're in regards to farming, specifically in the United States. Without a doubt, it's happening across the world. But
Yes.
it's going to highlight the statistics and the details of what's really going on in the world of farming today and what crisis we're facing that most of us are not aware of. Super crucial stuff. Um, and before we dive into that, let's just share more of what's your background. Who
Yeah.
are you, and like how did you find your way into the work that you're doing today?
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for that introduction. And as I get older, I look back and I realize that God had a plan for me, and I also recognize the fight I put up as a younger man, and yet here I am anyway.
Yeah, yeah,
But so I guess briefly, I was raised in southern Utah, just outside of Zion National Park, little
Oh,
town.
beautiful,
Used to be a
beautiful.
little town called St. George. It's a
Um,
big growing town now.
it's
Uh,
still there, isn't it?
Still there. Yep, it's
Yeah, it's a
massive.
beautiful place. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just grown a lot. I mean, when I grew up, it was a small town. Now it's on the map. So
Right, it
uh,
is.
the farms are all neighborhoods now, unfortunately, but
Mm,
it's how it goes. So I grew up there. Um, I'm the city slicker cousin of 5 generations of ranchers. So I grew up doing the cattle drives and the brandings, loved the lifestyle, always wanted to be a rancher. Um, but the way it works is typically, my mother married a guy from the city. If she would have married a guy from the ranch, I would have been a rancher. So uh, anyway, just grew up living that lifestyle, loved doing and participating in the cattle drives, the brandings, but also I grew up listening to a lot of meetings, family meetings about
mm,
different pressures that they
mhm,
were under raising
mhm.
livestock on public lands and in the West. Lots of different topics. Rain, not getting rain. We prayed for rain my whole life. That was a constant in the home, was praying for rain because we are in a dry environment.
So now is this in the 70s or 80s at this time where you were really introduced to, like, 'cause it's a rough lifestyle. It's like an
Yeah.
old good grit American lifestyle.
Yeah, this is I was born in 83, so as this is more of my awareness as I got older around the early 90s and then on.
Right.
Yeah,
Things were really starting to escalate at that point in the 90s.
absolutely. Yep. The damage from what policies had been put in place decades before, they were well underway, and our family was living through that
Right.
during this time, and families still are currently.
Sure.
Um, so yeah, just this, you know, it's interesting what you'll absorb as a young person and not really recognize until later. It's
Mm,
epigenetics. It's that the feeds into all of that, and so that's kind of how I grew up, and just being aware that I always wanted to be a rancher. And my uncle told me when I was younger, if you're going to be a millionaire rancher, you need to start with 10 because you'll lose it all and have a million. And in other words, just describing the fact that people who ranch and farm nowadays, in many cases, do it to maintain the heritage. So they have
mhm.
off-farm jobs to support this lifestyle of food production, which is crazy. They're producing the most important thing a living organism needs, us as human beings, and they have to have another job to afford to do that.
Well,
So
so let's stop there for a moment
yeah,
and let that sink in.
yeah,
That these legacy, I'll just call them legacy farmers, like the heart of the United States, heart of America, are knowing they're not making any money. They're still driving these farms, knowing that they probably have to get some kind of external funding
hmm
to survive.
yep,
Like, wrap your mind around that is not how this country started,
yeah,
but it's where we are now and what we're finding a way out of. Thank you for sharing that. That's
yeah.
money for people to grok.
That's right. And in fact, we did a podcast and we broke down the reduction in farms and ranches across America
Uh-huh.
over history, as it relates to the power that the USDA and the Department of Interior gained over time. But we specifically looked at what major policies were implemented over time that affected that. And in the beginning, the first three policies, especially, and I mean, there's a few more in there, were all finance mechanisms. So the
Hmm.
very first thing the USDA did to get involved in our family farms and ranches was offer financing. And then that financing turned around and bit them in the rear end, and we started the decline of our producers.
So
And
how did that work? Like, there were contingencies involved, obviously, to those. There were ties in with those
yeah,
contractual obligations.
yeah. So just ties that couldn't be met. And then also ties that, in 1963, the Center of Economic Development for our country, they actually said the movement of farm labor off farms has not been fast enough to take advantage of technology. So our goal is to remove 1/3 of farmers off farms in 5 years. Okay,
Yeah.
so let that sink in.
Right.
The
Yeah.
people lending you the money also want you gone.
Right. Yeah.
You're never going to win.
So how are they doing that exactly? So that was literally a contingency of a contract, or just how is that working?
Just like buying power and where it's going to go, and then all the markets. ebbing and flowing based off of manipulation in certain areas. It's a,
Uh,
I would have an attorney here with you to break it. That's what we did on that podcast because it's super complicated, and that's part of the problem.
mm,
You're making a system to produce food so incredibly complicated.
mm.
The mountains of paperwork just to have raw dairy and make it available to you as a consenting adult is crazy, right? And
Right.
so that's the problem as a whole. But our government was working directly against these farmers because what was happening is, as they were, the technology they're talking about is farm technology. So when farms were 40 acres and a mule or 160-acre homesteads, because that's what the government made available across the nation.
Those are the land patents, which I'd
Those were,
love to talk about.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, so then how can you use these massive mechanized machines that are now capable of harvesting tens of thousands of acres at once when the landscape's broken up by individual farms? So you got to get those out of the way to take advantage of large scale operations that are more efficient, more profitable for the ones that are in charge.
Mhm, mhm.
Right. So that's essentially in a really high level what has happened, and they have just slowly chipped away to where we are down to the very few farms we have left in America.
Okay, so you were raised in this. You firsthand had the experience of seeing family suffering
Hmm.
and really being in the heartbeat of all of that.
Hmm.
So that drove you as you grew into a man. Your mission became pretty easily scribed. I'm sure there's a deeper calling
Yeah.
spiritually or from God in all of this, as you're saying.
Right.
So what was that one point? It's like how so other than being exposed to it as a young man and growing into manhood with this, where did that journey begin? Like where did it come from leaving the farm? You called yourself a city slicker. Like where did it go from being a city slicker to where you're back into this,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
guess you're kind of moving into a bureaucratic process to see if you can stop the bullshit bureaucracy.
Yeah. Which I didn't think I was going to have to go because I'm working on a technology company to serve, a private organization that we can dictate how it functions to be of service. And that's what I'm doing. But I'm now finding myself a lot more in policy, which I knew was necessary, but I didn't know I was going to find myself here personally.
Uh-huh.
So the impetus was, first of all, I'm a combat veteran, and so went through challenges from that, and from that was introduced to plant medicine,
Uh-huh.
and that changed some things inside my mind and how I viewed the world, of course.
Yeah.
And from that, I became very connected to nature, which
Hmm.
which I was always connected to nature, but more of not from the depth that I now had.
Like a spiritual awareness, a
Yes.
deeper awareness, an energetic awareness of the
Yep.
high.
Yep. I
So
had respect for nature, but I didn't have a spiritual connection to nature. And then when I did, I looked at the desertification happening in the world, but specifically in the West where my family are. These lush grasslands,
mm,
that was the West, the prairies are now deserts, and that's not natural, right? So
yeah.
I got connected to that first.
Mm,
Um, but then the mentors and people I would learn from in that space, something became clear that if you don't fix the economic impact of the people in those environments became degraded because of the economic impact or some relationship to the economics. So if you don't fix the economics of that for those locals in a way that honors nature, then you're not going to fix that problem. Specifically, a friend and a relative of mine did this massive project in Saudi Arabia in Al Baida, and they regreened the desert there by
mhm,
slowing water as it came off the watersheds. Okay,
mhm.
so now he moved into an organization where he's working to build mangroves, restore mangroves along coastal lines. But in all of his learnings, he realized, well, if we plant all these mangroves, why are they gone in the first place?
Right.
Because the people that lived around the mangroves were in poverty, so they cut them down to sell for firewood or to use for firewood. So if
Hmm.
we go plant these mangroves but don't serve the locals that are here, then they're going to just cut them down again. So he's now designed a concept where the locals work a shrimp farm that's built inside the mangroves, The mangroves feed the shrimp feed the mangroves, but the economic return of the locals is taking care of the environment that's bringing them the shrimp that they
Yep.
then can sell and make money, right? So
True sustainability.
that's right. And so those mentors, as they taught that and passed on to me, it planted seeds that I, wasn't prepared to be aware of yet. So I was really focused on this regenerative agriculture movement to regreen these deserts, and then I started selling beef for my cousin's ranch. So now I'm aware of the land, and I know that actually farmers and ranchers are the solution for our environmental problems. It's not
Mm,
less livestock; it's a lot more livestock. It's
uh-huh. Of
we
course.
had 60 million bison roaming in the West, 60 million. And when they first started implementing rules about how many livestock you were allowed to have in the West, so the bison were gone by now, settlers were in, right? And then they start these rules in the 30s. We were down to 18 million
Wow.
uh, ruminating animals comparison to bison. Well,
Right.
the desert started. We kicked off desertification, right? And there's a lot of things inside of that. So the point is unless we fix the economic problems for our producers, then the things that they can do, which is raise more livestock to regreen the desert, why would they raise more livestock if there's no market?
Right.
Right. So you have to fix that first. Well, then you start looking at, okay, well, who controls the market? Well, 4 companies control 85% of the meat we consume. 2 of those are foreign. So in the first 17 days of January, Brazil imported more beef and they met their quota in the first 17 days of January. It's a tariff quota. That doesn't mean they stop importing, it just costs them more, but they reached the quota in the first 17 days.
Uh, I've
So
I've heard that before. I heard Brazil was really kicking off, the cattle world, and that they became great importers, which obviously is a problem, that we have to import meat to begin with, when we were probably one of the biggest meat producers in the world.
yeah, we were.
And
Yeah.
and I want to sideline something really, really fast. A while ago, you're talking about deserts, and that your family, I guess you said your uncle regreened a desert, and then they had the mangroves. So it brought to my attention some of the stuff I've been hearing about Gaddafi, which the story that the mainstream media tells us about Gaddafi is that he was just a bad man and people wanted him gone. But my deeper understanding of what Gaddafi brought forward is he actually regreened the deserts out there by tapping into primary water sourcing.
Hmm.
He tapped into
Interesting.
the primary water wells, brought up, created these lush lands in the deserts. Then they came in and dropped the bomb on the guy because they're like, nope, 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 can't have that. Can't have deserts turned
Yeah.
into greenlands.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I just wanted to drop that out there because there's a lot of discussion now about primary water sourcing, which not many people are aware of, yet it's very real. And maybe that's something that you could bring into the work that you're doing as well, or maybe pass it on to the ones that need to hear about it, that are doing the regreenings. Um, and I wanted to stop for just a moment. I wanted to talk about your family. You talk a lot about your family, and I wanted to go into more of your family history, and then talk about more, because we're now getting into the work that you're doing, and you're going
Yeah.
in the statistics. So I wanted to kind of back up a little
Yeah.
bit.
Sure.
And before we do, I just wanted to mention, many of you probably already know that I'm the founding director of the Sacred Honor Educational Fellowship, and the fellowship at large, and it falls in the play of what we're talking about here with AJ. It helps people understand how the system, the corporate system, functions through commerce and contract. So it creates that delineation, the distinction between the United States of America, the Republic, and the federal corporation, why they're distinct, how they're distinct, when it all happened historically, and all that is in what's called breaking the spell within the fellowship. So you can join. There's going to be a link below for you. You can join and watch. It's complimentary. You can go in and watch Breaking the Spell edumentary that gives you the historical information, and then it teaches you about self-governance. So we've got 4 pathways, and it teaches you about political status. It teaches you about private trust establishments and private clubs, how they work, why they work, um, and alloidial land and equity. So alloidial land within alloidial land is a learning the process and the historical value of land patents. So you alluded to the land patents. 160 acres are the metes and bounds that they created when they created the jurisdictions or the areas of the land patents. Very important historical information to learn. They're still active today. They were shortly enacted They were put into place actually before the Revolutionary War was completed, but they were really organized about 30 or 40 years later. And it was a big part of how people went out west and staked their claim, right? The old pioneers, that was drawing forth those land patents. And it didn't cost anything. They were to be granted to the people, not sold. So these are the kinds of things that you can learn in the fellowship, and how you can shift your life from the awareness of the only option that we've been told all our life, which is the public system, and learn what the private ledger is, or the private system is, and how you can build your life that way to protect your real legacy, including land. So again, that link will be below. So thanks for hearing that. So now let's jump into the Bundy family history. Just not too long. I really want to, for one, I think this will bring forth a deeper heartbeat of where you come from.
Yeah.
Like this is part of your legacy family, and this is ingrained in your DNA, ingrained in your nervous system, now ingrained in the heart and the work that you do in the world. So share a little bit about the Bundy family. What happened in that
Yeah.
really historical experience?
Yeah. So super brief. Family homesteaded the Arizona Strip in 1916. That's when the first Bundys went out there as part of those land patents. So that was in 1916. Our family now, our last reunion, we have a reunion every 4th of July. There was 1,100 people. Those are all family. So that's our clan. So in
Wow,
this context, just understand we're talking about one of those families of that whole group.
got it.
And
Yeah.
most of them, many of them are ranchers all over the Southwest. Okay, so and I'm going to give you more of like a 10,000-foot view. I wasn't there
Great.
on the ground, but I've had many conversations with them as
Of course.
I've tried to learn. But essentially, what happened is in 2014. So ranchers have what's called AUMs, grazing rights, and those AUMs are how many cows that they can run on public land that they have a particular lease to per month, right? So it dictates what they can run. Now, there's a lot of problems inside of that we're going to be fixing soon, but there's a lot of conflict around these contracts because those contracts, when that rancher dies, the family actually has to pay a death tax on those AUMs because it's a right. It's a they own them, right? So they have the right. It's like if you own the mineral rights on that piece of ground, well, you've got the right to go in and drill it, right? And you might get people that stand in your way and so forth, but you do have the right to carry forward. But
Right.
grazing rights were the first. I mean, this was what was part of getting settlers out to the west. So they hold more rights, I think, than any rights on the ground. But
Homestead acting. Homestead
yeah,
Act. Yeah.
but through corrupt governments, they have found ways to make it seem like those don't carry the weight that they should.
Right.
It's still in law, but they use legalese to make it seem that they don't carry the value that they should, right?
Right. So there's the distinction between the public and the private. So somewhere in the 40s, this is like a little bit after the time you're talking about. See, prior to 1930, or 1940, they used to issue the land patents with the deeds when you bought a house and you go to the county recorder's office. And what they did after the 40s, when the commercial scene came in, so 1938 Erie Railroad versus Hopkins or Tompkins, that was that seminal court case that clearly stated, the court stated, everything now is being managed and navigated. Even the courts are being navigated as a commercial system,
Mm.
right? So then at that point, they started hiding the land patents. So now when you buy a house and you go to the county recorder's office, they only give you a warranty deed, which is a commercial real estate item, right? So then they started after the 40s, they remapped the
Mm.
system, and they removed the meets and bounds awareness of the land patents out of our awareness. Even the county officials don't even know this anymore. So
Yeah,
we have to now re-educate these people. So this is a direct relationship to what
yeah,
you're talking about. Suddenly the bureaucrats are saying, no, 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 we actually control this, not you. But that's
yeah,
not the case.
yeah, yeah. Interesting. Well, so yeah, that does kind of really show what happened here. I mean, what happened was that my understanding is they were paying their grazing fees to the federal government, and
Mhm.
then my uncle discovered that those grazing fees were then being used to get him off the land, and so he reverted back to the Constitution and said, actually, our grazing fees are supposed to be paid to the county that we're grazing in,
Hmm.
and so he started sending his money to the county. Now, my understanding is they took a few of those, and then at some point they stopped, and you know I can speculate that maybe a case was being built. I don't know that to be true, but they did take a few. Anyway, so that led to the attempted confiscation and roundup and seizure of their land and their cattle. And that's what you see happening in all the photos with the ranchers under the bridge and the federal agents, armed to the teeth in Nevada. And that was 2014. That was the first run in.
Mm,
Ultimately, the BLM decided to stand down, I think because they got enough proof and evidence that they were overreaching significantly. But
yes.
during that whole time, when they finally got back on the land, they had found massive dead pits where they started killing their cows and just shoving them in dead pits, hauling them off. They destroyed all the water infrastructure that they had put in. That was also benefiting wildlife in the middle of the desert, by the way. And so they just made it a living hell. Somewhere
Wow.
along the way, there was something to do with Senator Harry Reid trying to make that land available for a Chinese solar company. So, it was just very corrupt. When I look at that, I just tell people, look, the government didn't want to own up to they were wrong, but they know they're wrong. So my family are still there ranching and back to business.
Yes.
If they were wrong, they would have ended up, going away, my family. But the government knew they were wrong and pretty much lost the momentum to hide that.
It's unfortunate that we have to stand up and learn what real constitutional natural law is and what the Constitution really protects
Yeah,
from these particular bureaucratic beasts, these monsters, these bullies.
yeah,
But unfortunately, that's where we are right now, and that's
mhm,
also what the fellowship helps educate people on, is like, these are your actual protected rights, that the Constitution is still the highest law of the land. We just don't even understand what it looks like anymore.
yeah,
So in that instance right there, just a quick ditty, the BLM doesn't have any right to hold land. They're a corporate entity. They're an agency.
yep,
So what happened is they just started squatting on the land that the people didn't claim.
yeah,
So there was a case in Colorado a year or so ago where the forestry department, pardon me, I'm just going to pull this out of memory the best I can. The forestry department was sitting on 350 acres that wasn't rightfully theirs. They squatted on it. And the family that realized that that land was actually theirs, they pulled that land patent. They brought it forth to the forestry department. Forestry department said, "No, no, we own this land. We own it." And they just simply said, "Can you please provide the title?"
hmm,
And guess what? Crickets. They couldn't provide any proof that they actually had any title or authority over that land.
hmm.
And then the
Interesting.
sheriff came in and said, "You're exactly right. You need to leave forestry department." And that 350 acres actually went back to the family. And funny enough, a few months later, the forestry department came in and said, "You know that 350 acres, could we rent that from you guys?" Yeah, so there's so much more for people to learn, and your family got terribly bullied, and
Yeah,
they really weren't sure exactly what to do. In the end, they fought hard,
yep,
they felt pain. In the end, they ended up winning.
right, right, exactly. Then there was another run in 2016. Like you said, at some point, it forces you to stand up and figure out where the line is. Somebody's got to do it.
Mhm.
And so my cousin Ammon Bundy, who was part of the original one with his dad, there was a different family being persecuted in Oregon, and he was sick and tired of seeing that happen, so he stood up. And a bunch of them went up there, and that's the most recent one people are familiar with, especially because
Yes.
recently the federal agents that killed one of the ranchers were just honored by Cash Patel for that particular event. So that's fresh on people's mind. This is what happened in 2016.
Mm,
Um, it's a long story, but really the synopsis of all of this is these are good men that would have otherwise never had to go that route,
yeah.
but they were not being heard because the federal government has taken so much control that they just squash you,
Mhm.
right? It's like, what I can see it coming. The reintroduction of wolves in areas that they're just wiping out the livestock, and the ranchers have to sit there and literally watch them eat their baby calves alive. And in many cases, they're killing for sport. But these guys are, if the ranchers I follow, they are so on edge because nobody's listening to them. Well, it's just going to boil over. That's
Mm,
what happened, with my family. Nobody listened, and until it boiled over. So the thing about what happened with my family, I always tell people, you may disagree. The only thing anybody I've ever heard really disagree with is how they handled it, because they had to get aggressive. But at the end, they were right in both accounts.
Yes, agreed.
So your only argument is you don't like how they handle it. That's what happens when you push a family and a man to where it's like, are you going to, fight on your feet or die on your knees?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
thank God we still have people that have that fight still in them.
Tenacity, yeah.
Yes,
They actually know the distinction between right and wrong and good and bad. They're not confused. The
right.
system is really the whole education system has been circumvented. People are completely indoctrinated away from what is true. And now everyone's being rewarded to move everything up into their head. It's all intellectualization where the mind can be manipulated and the heart, which always knows and recognizes truth, is being obfuscated. We've lost our way and our inner compass. However, it is coming back. It is coming
Yes,
back. Thankfully, people are
yes,
starting to see this. They're pulling their kid out of the public indoctrination systems, and
yes.
they're becoming aware. So, bless your family. There's actually a lot of beautiful, um, beautiful, like heartfelt. I just call grit Americans that get this,
Yeah.
and it's now becoming the heartbeat of America yet again. And more people are starting to see it and take action. So one of the issues, and I know that you see this and you're in the dance of it, is the distinction between who's going to do something about it. So we've
Mhm.
made the foolish mistake to think that some bureaucrat is actually going to be our savior and they're going to do something. We know that's not going to happen. The only
Mhm.
thing that's going to make a change here is us.
Yeah.
The people need to relearn, they need to understand what's happening, and they are the ones that need to self govern our way out of the system that they created that we didn't partake in. Actually, we've just been fooled into giving it our energy. So we're
Mhm.
pulling our energy away from it. And this is part of what you're in the dance of it. You're in the heartbeat of the people on the soil, but you're also now dipping your toes in the bureaucracy, which is that particular system. And you're trying to eke the big Titanic and move the direction of the big Titanic as well, which takes a lot of grit as well. So let's share a little bit more about that. Like what's happening with fromthefarm.org. Keep looking down because I want to make
Yeah.
sure I say it right. From
Yeah,
the
yeah. Well, yeah, so let me just say, you asked earlier, and it is important to me that I share that this is a calling from God,
yeah.
because I would have never gone this far into what I'm into, or even gotten this far had it not been for his guidance. I
Mm,
mean, I look back and I'm thinking, so early 2020, I was selling beef for my cousin's ranch. I told you how I got introduced. I'm like, well, let me get directly into it somehow. So I started selling beef direct to consumer for my cousin's ranch, a different family member in that family, and that was early 2019 or that late 2019. Then COVID hit and our business was growing. Things were going well because the Butcher Box was kind of creating this whole marketplace for e-commerce, direct to consumer,
mhm.
monthly box of beef,
Right.
right? And
Yeah, yeah.
so
Yeah,
they
yeah.
they kind of built the path forward on that, and a lot of people were starting to move that direction. And they did a great job introducing people to that way of receiving food. So we were participating in that. Well, we called to get our next round of processing to drop our cows off for processing, and they said we can get you in a year and a half. And I was like, what? So COVID had kicked off. Things were starting to, dominoes were starting to fall. And just so for context, for your audience, prior a week ago, I would have called and they said, "How many do you have?" And I could have said 5, and they'd say, "Yep, we'll get you in next week or 2 weeks." Like that's what it was. Overnight, a year and a half.
Wow.
So what happened is, and this goes into what people need to be aware of in the state of our food system. Um, those 4 companies that control 85% of the meat, they're built for optimized efficiency for revenue, right? And so those 4 companies are processing 80% of the meat we consume here in just 30 processing facilities. So that means they're processing 6,000 plus cows a day if we're just talking cows, right? Pigs, you're talking big facilities that are doing, multiple tens of thousands a day.
Wow.
Now, in order to do that, you have to have 6,000 today and 6,000 tomorrow and 6,000 the next day, right? So you have these massive feedlots that have all of these pens that number is finishing in cycle. Well, when COVID hit and those processing facilities closed, you have all of these live animals that are now costing money to feed. And so anybody that was holding on to animals that were ready to be processed filled every small facility that was left in America. And they backed up. And so it was like, we're in trouble. Like our food system, we already kind of knew we were in trouble, but then from the inside, looking at the food system as a whole, I was like, man, we're on the precipice of famine. And so I'm driving down the road, and the news is talking about empty store shelves, no meat on the counters. And I see these fat cows standing in the field because the ranchers got them ready. But the consumer doesn't know how to shake the hand that feeds them anymore. We have been removed from the people who grow our food. The most important thing as a human being to live, you have no idea where it's coming from.
Yeah.
Like, that's a really efficient marketing scam.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So this, I was just struck with this vision. Somebody needs to build the Airbnb of local food, where somewhere people can go and just know when they go there, everybody they buy from, you're actually buying it right from the source, right? That's simpler for the consumer. And then that would take off all of the effort of marketing and sales that the farmer now has to take on to go direct. And that's a lot of work.
Should bring down the cost significantly as well.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, we're way under inventory that we need to feed America. That's affecting the cost currently.
Okay. All right.
But if you incentivize them to grow more because they have customers, they'll grow more, and eventually the supply will increase and cost will come down. But the rancher's getting the retail dollar so they can afford to do that. Currently, beef alone, the rancher only gets 9 to 14 cents on the dollar. So when you go buy, a steak for $20, $40, the rancher got 9 to 14 cents on that sale.
Oh.
So that's why they're closing.
Wow.
They're not making enough money.
Okay. So a couple things are coming up for me. One is, so how it works. You say the Airbnb of meat, Airbnb of food.
Any food, but yes.
Any food. How does that work? Like more specifically, logistically, how does that work?
Yep. So right now we can serve the people who already have some either desire or level of understanding on how to ship it to the customer, right? So you go to fromthefarm.org, you sign up, it's free to sign up. Then we know where you're at. And then our system will give you the closest people in your area that you can buy right from. And when you do, each of those stores are individually owned and managed by the farmer themselves or their staff, right? So we're not the middle. We're just we're the technology version of where we used to get our food in the old days, was at the market.
Right.
Because you're not buying from us, you're buying from, Carter Country or Three Sons or One Farm Poultry. They're all managing their own stuff. We're just trying to bring those guys together so that the producer can earn the retail dollar and the customer knows where to find them so that they can stay around.
Got it. So there's so a couple things come up. So there was a shortage of processing. So now these local farmers, their awareness now, they're able to process.
Yep.
Right. So there's an uptick in that.
Yep.
So you're becoming the shining light of saying, hey, local folks, you have 3 or 4 local farms around you that you can buy direct from, and we're just that link for you to find them. So how advanced is it? How are you doing? How many farms do you actually have in your database?
Yeah.
What can people do to help the process, help this grow smartly?
Yeah, we currently have just under 100 producers across the country in 35 states.
Okay.
We need more producers.
For sure.
When God gave this vision, along with it came, you can't sell it. Like, you can't lose control of it.
Yeah.
Gosh, man, that's become harder and harder.
Oh, I'm sure it's going to get harder and harder.
Yeah. And so, but at the time I'm like, okay, what did I know? But even at the time I'm like, not me. I mean, this whole vision when it came down. So I might have lost your question there, but
But
oh
my question was, how are you doing? So you got 100 processors,
yes,
you got 100
yeah.
farms.
So we
How
need
many
more
more do you
producers.
need? Like, how
Yeah.
can people help?
Yeah, if you know farmers and ranchers, send them our way so we can
Okay,
get them set up. We are you can come on here and sell completely for free as a producer. There are some features in our software we can't offer because it costs
okay,
us more money to run. But even at a paid subscriber, it's only $100 a month for the farmers. We're way less than everybody else out there because we're here to serve.
right.
Now, the more farmers we get on there, the more consumers we can serve. Our biggest challenge is when consumers come to the platform, they're like, "Oh, well, there's nobody in my area. I'll check back." Well,
Mm.
totally understand because our vision is hyper local food system, but we've got to get there.
Mhm.
So if you're willing to have it shipped to you, you're still buying right from farmers that need you. So find somebody as close to home and have it sent. It'll show up frozen or fresh. They have the skill sets to do that. But that would be very helpful too. And really just sharing. Like where I was getting at with the raising the money, if we went and sold out to private equity or venture capital, we've had them come to us already. Like there's $20 million available to me.
Mhm.
But what we've done is built a system where I don't take a penny on the sale of the food. We have found other ways in the ecosystem to make
Great,
revenue so they get 100% of the food dollar.
great.
That also means I don't have $10 million to go onboard 10,000 farmers before marketing, right?
Right.
We as a community have to agree like this ain't perfect, but where it's going is what we need,
Yeah, love
right?
it. That makes a lot of sense. So this really is a community development orientation. More people need to be aware of this. Obviously, when you get more funds coming in, that's very honorable. You get more funds coming in, then you can spend a little bit of that, tick it out into the world for broader awareness.
Yep, that's right.
Um,
And
so
inside that, we're working on other things to bring awareness organically. Like we're
yeah,
not going to stop just because I don't have the budget.
yeah,
We find other ways to do it, and God's guiding this whole thing. I mean, it's
yeah.
just incredible.
I can so completely relate to you in regards to being guided by God. I'm telling you, I
Yeah,
never thought I'd be doing what I'm doing now,
yeah,
8 years ago.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
something comes to me because what I do sometimes is I know people that will that have cattle, sheep, things like that, and then I will tend to them, care for them through their farming, and then I bring them to the butcher, and the butcher takes care of them. And sometimes there's a group of us that do it, and then we split
Yeah,
up the meat.
yeah,
So is that maybe part of the plan too down the road is to have like an alternative for people? Maybe they don't have really fast processing or not local processing or just whatever, but have
yeah,
those as options because that helps a broader
yeah.
family of farmers instead of just the ones that can do processing.
Yep. Everything we've done to date has come from the communication and interact. Like when the vision first came, I spent 3.5 years asking questions before I even started software development. And those questions were all geared towards farmers and consumers. Here's my idea, poke holes in it. And so we did that for years until it made sense. But we live in that space. We continue. I'm not trying to get it. I'm not trying to be right. We're trying to get it right. So that means we're constantly questioning our ways of doing things based on the feedback we're receiving.
Mhm.
So yes, as
Smart.
we meet different people doing it different ways, we look at our system and say, how can we adapt this to that community? Right. And if we can, we will, because the mission is to help people shake the hand that feeds them, however that looks. The mission was also like, if the power turned off tomorrow, I'm not doing this to make a bunch of money someday and buy a yacht. I'm doing this to connect as many families as I can. So, how fast can we connect as many families? So, if the power goes off, we've connected as many people as possible so they still can source the food they need, right?
Yep.
It's our calling. It's
Yeah.
and if it is successful, I ain't buying a yacht. I'm gonna help other families get farms and food, and like that's just who we are. There's
Yeah.
too much to do. We've come so far
Totally.
away from where we need to be that we need people doing things with philanthropy in mind, of service in mind, because resources, that's where it should go. We're where we're at because those resources were put in corruption and evil. We need good people that can earn resources that can go into the good things that we need as a community.
It's a life mission, and I can relate to that and really appreciate your heart and the work you're doing and what you're driven to do and bring forth in your lifetime. One, I still really focus so much attention on people just tap into your local communities.
Yes.
We have to find our way back to our local communities and get our minds away from the bureaucratic process. When we find ourselves into the heartbeat of the communities and we redevelop those again, where we're actually not letting the systems govern us, we're self-governing as people, and the system is actually supporting us in small ways. The government is shrunken. Um,
Yes.
that's where we need to go. So I just have one last question. When we were on a chat a few weeks ago, you were mentioning something about going to Washington and you were tapping into some bureaucratic process. And I just wanted to talk about what is it that you're dabbling with in that realm, and what are you hoping to achieve by dancing in that bureaucratic world?
Yeah, good question. Uh, we believe that we have to do this by and for the people. So that's where our focus is. And I also understand we do live in an environment and a context that does have some guardrails that need to be considered, or at least if we can change them, then that makes it better to move forward in the right direction. And so while building this thing and not believing I have any support coming from anywhere else other than our own communities, and we'd prefer it that way because then we can't be manipulated. We also want to make sure we can change policies that are affecting the ability for people to buy local food. Right? If we build an ecosystem that is like ours, but you can't buy raw dairy because local laws don't allow it, then we haven't helped that community. So we have to get involved in those processes to make raw dairy available, for example, right? So, my whenever I speak, I pray to God to fill my mouth with His words. I'm just a tool. I don't, I've collected this information. How do I disseminate it to this audience where it needs to go? And then I just let it fly. And half the time, I come off the stage and I have no idea what I said.
I can relate to that
Yeah,
too.
yeah,
Channels.
yeah. And I also do it wearing a tinfoil cowboy hat, so it
Oh,
gets a little bit more.
what?
It gets a
That's
little bit
awesome,
more attention,
dude.
when talking in a tinfoil cowboy hat. But
Well, it just happens to be super badass looking. You can't I can't really tell it's tinfoil, but I can see
yeah,
where you're going. That's pretty amazing.
yeah, it sure is.
Good
So
for you.
anyway, so we live in a world of trying to capture attention, and when you have a message that has to be heard, you do some things that you need to, and
That's what you gotta do.
I did it. And what that did was got me a meeting in Washington D.C. with Secretary of Agriculture. She's the
Okay.
one in charge of all of it, right? And I've been praying and hoping that she was somebody that was good for us because what we've seen so far isn't. Um, but I've learned that she doesn't know what she doesn't know, and she is here to serve.
Okay.
So our meeting in DC was just Tuesday, so I'm fresh out of that.
Okay.
It's profound.
Okay.
So what we've set out to do, again, God is guiding this, and the way the meeting turned out, and the structure, and the timing, and all the things we couldn't have asked, we couldn't have created that. And then the speed at which implementation is following
Hmm.
I can't believe it. I mean, these are problems that we've been begging to have fixed for decades. And anyway, so I
I
have
think
to be pretty vague on the specifics because
okay.
I can't
Because I
ruin
was
it.
just about to try to tease some of that
I
out
know,
of
I
you.
can tell. And it's really hard for me to not share because it's really important. But there have been instances where people say things too soon and it ruins it. There are really good people in what there are people like us, like me and you, and people listening to this who are in this administration. And if we label them as whatever label because they're in, politics or a particular president's administration, regardless of your feelings, you don't even give them a chance to make a difference. And so that's what I was praying for, and that's what I discovered. There are really great people in these positions that are asking that they were like us and like, this can't continue. We've got to make something change or we're in trouble. And now they find themselves in those positions. And I was one of those people who was like, I don't trust you. Right away, I was like, nope, you're in that. But then I had to catch myself and be like, well, it's a whole new group. Maybe they're the right people, but we need to meet with them to find out. And so yeah,
So thank you for sharing that. And there's some, worthy, get on the phone and have some deeper chats about this. I want to implore people to know that there was a time in the American history where we didn't have the government in our business.
Yep.
We didn't have the governments on our land. We didn't have the governments telling us whether we should drink raw milk or not, or whether we can sell our meat to our neighbors, or whether we ship it across to the next county. Or the government wasn't in our business. So what I try to share with people is like, how did we get to the point where now the government's in our business and telling us what to do, when to do, and how to do it, and they're taking away all of our wealth and they're stealing our land from us? As you're sharing,
Hmm.
we are in this process to where we actually have to ask for permission from this source outside of us to whether we can drink a glass of milk, or whether we can eat meat, or whether we can grow some food. They want to get to a point where they tell us we can't capture our own water for our own benefit, or we can't even grow food in our own lawn without them coming in and saying, well, you got to pay us a fee to grow food, or pay us a fee to pull water out of the soil.
Yep.
Like, what has disconnected people? So I'm really trying to get people to realize how that happened. And so there's people that are already taking action, that they're pulling forth their land patents, and now they're holding a Lloydale. They've released all the encumbrances on their land, and they're holding the Lloydale title, which land patent is just part of that, right? Now, and then they're creating private clubs. That means they got their friends and neighbors and people across different states that are buying things or contributing towards meat or other things that are part of that private membership. And that's outside of that corporate entity. So what I would like to see happen is for people to be aware that we don't have to exist within this corporocracy, that we can exist as private people and self-govern again. And how about getting some people that are in that bureaucratic process to actually see that that's the way it used to be and the way it should be, and get them to support that to happen.
Yeah.
That's what I would like to see happen in bureaucracy. So thanks for letting me go on my tirade there, because that's sort of
Yeah, I'm fully on board with that and think that's how it should be. And I'm trying to get this side done because it'll open up a floodgate. Like it's like in my world of adjusting my my purist mentality around regenerative agriculture,
yeah,
because I'm like, when I first got introduced to that, I'm like, you have to go this route. You just have to. And then as I've been in this process for more than 5 years and learning human behavior and their willingness to adopt and how we best get there, but also triaging, the reality of triaging where we are at as a nation.
yeah,
Look, I love the idea of it. I'm one of the biggest believers in the future Shangri-La of living in a country where we actually have prairies back.
yeah.
But that's a 50 to 100-year process.
Very well, very
right?
well.
And so I'm like, right now, we only have 88 million beef cows left in America and 350 million Americans, or 40 or 20 or whatever those numbers are, but a lot more than we have food. So when I look at that, I say, okay, the first triage is all the things we're all passionate about, all of them. They all rely on the fact that you have food to eat. Whatever mission, whatever initiative, whatever vision God is giving you, you cannot execute if you starve.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Agriculture is the foundation.
Or you're stressed out or under duress or traumatized all the time.
Right. Agriculture is the foundation of all life.
All society today.
All society today. Well, even back then, it was either hunter-gatherers. It didn't matter. If you weren't edifying the body, you weren't around, right? So
in modern times, yes.
Yep. So in my view now, having gone all over the place, we need a triage, which means we need farmers and ranchers willing to do a very, very challenging job.
Yeah.
To be confident that we, the American people, have their back. And if you grow it, we'll buy it. Because we have to get back from the 88 million to 100 million, then 150 million. We only have 1.8 million farms and ranches left in America. That's all of them, though. That's including the big ones, the medium ones, and the small ones. We only have something like 600,000 ranchers, small family ranchers left in our country. 600,000.
Mind-blowing.
Feeding the rest of the nation, right? What we need is to focus on building a new agrarian movement. I also believe as that movement grows, the natural process will be to learn that regenerative agriculture is the way.
Mm-hmm.
But if we don't do it by demonstration and invitation, and instead, just like we are pissed off with the government, we say, you're wrong for not doing it this way. They're going to put up a block wall, and it'll take forever for them to see through that to see a new way. So instead, hey man, you do your thing the way you need to. I'm going to do it the way that's freedom. I'm going to grow beef my way. You grow beef your way. I'll grow beef my way. But
Yes.
then through example, and if we can build a community built on abundance versus scarcity, then I'm going to tell my neighbor what I'm doing that's making me
Yeah.
a lot more money than he is.
Yeah.
And through invitation, he'll adopt that practice. So first, we've got to focus on triaging the issue. And the best way I can get that momentum going is if I can go to Washington, D.C. and get these ranchers a meeting, because that's what I do. It's not me. I'm not the expert. I'll get you over the bullseye, and then the group I bring with me is going to help you hit it.
Mm.
That's the world I live in. I don't
Okay.
have to be the expert, right? So when she
Yes,
said,
of
come
course.
talk to me, I brought 4 ranchers from 4 different states, and they discussed their needs, and that's why it worked. If I would have walked in, it wouldn't have worked, because I'm here to serve them, not anything else.
So what's the biggest thing that people can do right now for that level of awareness and supporting what you're doing?
Yeah. Yeah, just if you go to fromthefarm.org and just join our mail list and be a part of the conversation. We're very respectful with the mailing. We send out policy. We send out, like, here's what's happening, because you as the consumer need to become informed about your food so that you can go and stand up and cast your vote when it's being affected, right? But we'll also help you connect with local producers as well. So just joining our community and helping elevate the voice of the farmer and rancher is massive.
Great. Spreading the word.
Yep.
For one, just leaning in that way doesn't cost anything to lean in. If anything,
Nope.
it's going to help you and benefit you to lean into this and learn and spread the word.
Yes.
AJ, thanks, bro. I really appreciate your time and your share, and I'd really like to track what you're doing. Perhaps bring you back on when there's some other milestones that have been reached, to share more, and also to share more of how things are going on, like what we call the private side, more people that are taking action, and perhaps we can be those way showers that create that bridge between the people and what they're really asking for now, and the bureaucratic process that ignores it all and has their own agenda because something else is feeding them and telling them what to do. So let's bridge
Yeah.
that gap. Let's bridge
Yes.
that gap.
Amen. Amen. Yeah. Happy to. So
Yeah.
grateful to meet you and be introduced to your community. I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I am as well, brother. Let's keep it going. Let's keep the fire alive.
Yes.
All right. Blessings to you. We'll talk soon.
Okay. Blessings. Thank you.